The original Traveler universe, that storied place of a science fiction adventure, which for 40 years has promised to put characters behind the wheel of their own starship, where they're going to go out and forge their own destiny, make fortunes, and get into trouble.
The way that we buy things, the way that our politics settle things, the way that our commerce grinds along and forgets and remembers people, places, and things. That's how Traveler Universe works. And it's had its share of detractors, but I think it's ready to come to your table. I've already talked about one of the pillars of the Traveler Universe, the jump drive. But what is the other one? To me, it's the Third Imperium. This vast government which seemingly is built upon a federal principle that its member worlds are independent to resolve its own affairs, while the Emperor, in a monarchical, hierarchical, bureaucratic juggernaut, keeps the borders safe and administers interstellar trade. But it's more complicated than that, right? Well, I'm the Complex Games apologist, and let's look through the window at the Third Imperium of Traveler. As a genre, science fiction has had so many of its antagonists share the same last name, Empire. But does that mean that the Third Imperium of the Traveler universe is the bad guy? Well, in the Traveler universe, the truth is that the night has already passed, and this is the dawn. The Scylian Federation re-established the lines of communication in space and brought about commerce and ended piracy, secured the borders from the ravages of the Aslan territorialists, these lion-like aliens that were carpetbagging and setting up dominion on former human worlds. And the Scylian Federation matured, I guess, into the Third Imperium. Its offices became hereditary, and the wealth accumulated by its megacorporations assured that the imperial nobility were invested in that long-term commerce. So, the Third Imperium is a lot like the governments of our time. It's just out to protect its own skin and out to protect the people that offer the most cash at the register. I want to put in a little escape hatch right here for this video, because if anyone's really uncomfortable with gaming drawing any serious analogies to the present day, or if, you know, you really just don't want to mix even the slightest little spice of real-world politics into your gaming, then go ahead, just open this little door and you know. And that's yet another reason that I think Traveler Universe is not only still going strong, but stronger than ever. It looks so much like the world we're living in right now. So is the Third Imperium the bad guys? No, I guess. Let's get into the details now. The Third Imperium asserts itself and makes itself known through the high laws of the Empire. And some of them are nice. Some of them say you've got the right to not be a slave. Some of them say you can't use nuclear weapons on your own people. And when I say your own people, the Imperium is allegedly a federal system where the member worlds have their own business to attend to, and they can attend to it how they like. Of course, that's mitigated by some more of the high laws, the big ones, that give it jurisdiction over all interstellar commerce. Yeah, that's right. If you're gonna do anything that gets in the way of interstellar trade,
then does that mean that I can't set trade policy, that I can't govern foreign corporations with my own hand in my own country? Is this the granddaddy of nightmare trade deals?
Now, the door is left more or less wide open on whether this means that you could do things like set tariffs or nationalize industries. But the Traveler Universe's canon is full of stories of trade wars and petty conflicts between member states and megacorporations. And these conflicts often rise to the level where the Imperium has to intervene to stop these warring states from getting out of hand.
So it seems like the rule is something to the effect of, you can do what you want as long as you don't be a space pirate, harbor any space pirates, or make your wars so noisy that space freighters are starting to have to make detours. Another important note here is that while it says that commerce between worlds is protected, the interesting thing is that member worlds are pretty clearly free to set their own immigration policy. And this is clear in the fact that the tech levels for all these different worlds vary a great deal, and also because a lot of worlds really you would want to move if you could, and yet people haven't.
These individual little worlds that were lost in the long night, that era of piracy and the recession of technology, jumped onto the bandwagon of the expanding empire and the safety and security from pirates and raiders that it offered. And now they can, rule their own people, I guess. Now, before we go too far into these nibbly-wibbly rules of the Imperium, let me point out to you that they're mostly felt as negative space, because after all, in most cases the player character's starship is carrying lasers that could blow up a city block. This is the Wild West, folks. Don't get me wrong. I'm just talking about the sheriff. The second Imperial High Law says that anything in the member worlds that would interfere or affect international trade is also the Empire's business. This is sort of good and bad, because this says that perhaps it means that mega corporations can't subvert these little local governments with bribes and with big money and the offer of many, many new jobs. But that's all up to Imperial arbitration. You have to track down an Imperial noble, you have to track down the right kind of Imperial bureaucrat, you have to take it to court. And remember when I mentioned in my jump drive video how slow interstellar travel is? One of the other big rules of the Imperium is that you can't set your own foreign policy. Yeah, there are some other interstellar states out there, the Julian Protectorate, the Vargar Extents, the Jodani Consulate, but they're the bad guys, or at the very least they're bringing in strange influences, psionics, robotics, the like. And so it's the Empire's business about how your world and how all the worlds within are going to interact with the big guys from the outside. There's one final catch-all among the Imperial High Laws, and that's that anything that the Imperium needs to do the others, either the national security ones or the trade ones, it gets. And this is what means that things like red zones and amber zones, places where your party is going to have to break the law to get onto those planets, that's under that prerogative. And that's also the same prerogative that means that the Imperium is very interested and claims pretty much to be the owner of any ancient artifacts that you find from civilizations before the dawn of man. So enough with the rules. What are the ways that the Imperium is going to make its presence felt in your campaigns? At your table, how are the players going to feel the Imperium? Well, the first and the most salient is the Extraterritoriality Lane, at the edge of every starport, where you go from being subject to the jurisdiction of the member world to being under the laws and the safety of the Imperial laws. This means that, if you get into any trouble with the local yokels, you run for the fence of the embassy. It's this cliche that is all too real even in our own present day. Another way that your players will get to know the Imperium is through its armed forces and through its agencies. The Imperial Interstellar Scout Service, which decides if anyone's up to the rights of Ascension or not. The one that goes out and finds that there are lost colonies. And it's traditionally one of the places where players acquire a starship, is that they retire out of the scout service and they're given a loaner of a scout vessel. The Imperial Navy is another vector that your players are going to witness. The frigates that are out there patrolling the frontiers looking for infiltration from Vargar Corsairs or Zodani psionic spying agencies, that's going to be a point of contact for you. And then there's always the vast Imperial spying apparatus, always looking for subversive elements and generally trying to, keep the cohesion of the world together. And your players may find themselves dragooned into the service of an Imperial spy on a covert mission, or perhaps they're just someone claiming to be thus, and it could be a double cross. Didn't say it wouldn't be an adventure though. One thing of special note here that's a little bit mundane is the X-Boat network. It's this vast data trunk line. It's kind of like the railroad of the Imperium. It's a place where you can send entire blocks of cultural data, radio, television, everything, and export it to the wider world at a very low price. And of course, this wasn't something anticipated or really described in the original Traveller canon, but it's pretty clear that since the entire Imperium speaks the same language, people are consuming the same culture too. And it's a very lonely existence riding in one of these 100-ton X-boats that make a jump 4 every week and then turn around and do it again in not even 24 hours. And this is not a place where you would want to continue that career, and it's run by the Scout Service. One thing that's not to be underestimated is the tactile way that your players will interact with the Third Imperium, through the cash that it prints, through the ID cards that they carry, and through the surplus military hardware from previous eras of technology.
As with anything in tabletop gaming, it's the little things that build immersion and create verisimilitude.
Throughout this teaching, one thing that I haven't touched on is how the Imperial Court governs itself, or really, how the Empire even runs itself. And in some respects, that's because the point of contact for your player characters is going to be the member world that they're from, and the Imperial institutions that they're going to come into contact with. So whatever it is that's going on in the core sector and on Capital, that's an incredibly developed and incredibly wealthy part of charted space, it's not really part of Traveller as a game, because it's always about playing at the fringes, playing in the spaces between. Traveller is a game of exploration, adventure, and discovery, and of getting yourself into hot water. Send lawyers, guns, and money, goes the Warren Zevon song, and that's a lot of what Traveller's about. If the jump drive is the enabler that creates those wide open spaces, then Third Imperium is what creates the protagonists that are naive to the dangers that they're going to fall into. They're the people that are going to build up skills and ambition and a little bit of wanderlust and become adventurers. And they need to have a home. They need to have some peace and security. The Empire might be a source of economic oppression. The Empire might be a source of impossibly remote bureaucracy and red tape, but since the Empire pays its bills solely on the revenue taxes from interstellar trade, it's not something that becomes oppressive. It's something that your characters walk into and discover. The Imperial nobility and the Imperial family are hereditary, but how much that matters is really up to you, and it's largely another thing that's remote from play, because the vast bureaucracies, the norms of these institutions, of the Navy, and of the Scout Service, they have so much institutional inertia that individual people matter less than the values of them. Lauren Wiseman likes to talk about the importance of honor in Traveller, and I would talk about the importance of continuity. Taken by itself, the Third Imperium is maybe one of the more dull parts of the Traveller universe, and yet it's the elephant in the room. It's something that, if you have a misunderstanding of, you're going to turn the setting into Star Wars. You're going to turn the setting into something wholly different, when in fact it's really so much like our own world. I've left the question implicit throughout this video of what kind of empire the Third Imperium is. Is it like the British Empire? Is it like the Chinese Empire? Is it like the modern day empire of global capitalism? And I think there's a little bit of all of those in there, but most certainly the latter, and that's intentional. Traveller is something that your characters can approach, your players can approach, and they instantly feel at home in it. I think things are dirty and things are lived in Traveller, and that's where the adventure comes, is when people want to be just at least a bit more comfortable, and they see an opportunity and grab it. I'm the Complex Games apologist, and I hope you enjoyed this. If you want the channel to grow, then like and subscribe and share this with whomever among your friends. And I hope to see you on the other side of the fourth wall for more videos like this in the future. Thanks.